He whispered it to me on my 71st birthday, right after sliding a nursing home brochure across the dinner table. He thought I was a senile old fool. He had no idea that my wife, the woman he dismissed because she sits in a wheelchair, was secretly recording every filthy word from a device hidden in the armrest. He also forgot one thing. I am an engineer who built 47 bridges, and I had just designed a trap that would send him to prison for 14 years. But that was 3 months later. Right now, in a dining room thick with candle wax and dishonesty, all I felt was a cold shiver running down my spine. Craig Holloway sat across from me, with a store-bought birthday cake between us, and a smile as fake as cheap plaster over a structural crack. My daughter Megan sat beside him. She had not looked at me once since they arrived. She kept her sweater sleeves pulled past her wrists, despite the Nashville summer heat pressing against the windows. A detail I noticed, but did not yet understand. "Happy birthday, Dad," Craig said, sliding a glossy brochure across the table. Cedar Oaks Senior Living. The cover showed white-haired people playing chess on a sunlit patio. "Megan and I have been talking. This place has world-class care. Doctors, therapists, everything you and Mom could need. We just want what is best for you." What is best for you? 4 words that sound like love, but taste like poison when spoken by a man who has never once asked how you take your coffee. Dot sat beside me in her wheelchair. She had spoken very little since her accident 3 years ago, but her mind was a filing cabinet that never lost a document. She looked at the brochure, then at Craig, then at me. Her fingers rested on the armrest, still, watchful. The way a librarian watches a patron she suspects of tearing pages from books. "Cedar Oaks," I said. "That is the place with the rose bushes?" Craig's smile widened. "Exactly, Walt. Beautiful gardens. You would love it." I nodded slowly and said nothing more. A good engineer does not argue with a cracked foundation. He documents it first. Dinner was quiet. Craig talked about a construction project he was managing. Something about a bridge contract in East Nashville. He mentioned it casually, the way a man mentions the weather, but I noticed Megan flinch when he said the word contract. Another detail I filed away without understanding. After the cake, Craig offered to wash the dishes. He had never washed a dish in my house in 12 years of marriage to my daughter. I thanked him and said I was tired. Dot and I went to the bedroom. I helped her into bed, turned off the lamp, and waited. At 11:15 I heard it. The soft click of my study door opening. Footsteps on the hardwood floor. The metallic scrape of a filing cabinet drawer being pulled open. I lay in the dark and listened to my son-in-law moving through my office, like a man who believed the owner of the house was too old and too confused to notice. He was wrong about the confused part. He was right about one thing. I was old. But old is not the same as finished. I did not get up. I did not confront him. I lay beside my wife in the darkness and stared at the ceiling, and felt something shift inside my chest. Not rage. Not yet. Something quieter. The instinct of a man who has spent 41 years reading structures for signs of hidden failure. Something was cracked, and I was going to find out where. I locked the study door and sat down in the leather chair across from her. The room smelled of old paper and machine oil from the crowbar Craig had left behind. Outside, the October wind pushed a branch against the window in a slow, rhythmic scrape. Dot reached down to the right armrest of her wheelchair. Her fingers found the seam I had built into the wood paneling, the seam that was supposed to hide her reading glasses and her secret stash of dark chocolate. She pressed the latch. The drawer slid open with a soft click. There were no reading glasses inside. No chocolate. Instead, the compartment was packed tight with manila folders. 6 of them, each one thick with documents, labeled in Dot's precise librarian handwriting. She pulled them out one by one and stacked them on my desk, with the quiet efficiency of a woman who had been organizing information her entire life. I stared at the stack. "What is this, Dot?" "3 months of homework," she said. She opened the first folder and turned it toward me. Inside were photocopies of bank statements addressed to our house but made out to a company I had never heard of. Cumberland Horizon Construction, LLC. The address listed was Craig's office on West End Avenue. "These started arriving in January," Dot said, "mixed in with our regular mail. Craig always volunteered to bring in the mail when he visited, remember? He thought he was intercepting them. But I am a librarian, Walt. I notice when something is filed in the wrong place." She opened the second folder. Copies of emails printed from Craig's laptop. "Megan left her computer logged into Craig's email when she brought the twins over last month," Dot explained. "It took me 11 minutes to find what I needed and print it while Megan was in the bathroom and the children were playing in the yard." I looked at her. This woman who could not walk to the kitchen without help, had been running a one-person intelligence operation from her wheelchair for 3 months. And she had not said a word. "Why did you not tell me?" I asked. Dot folded her hands in her lap. "Because I know you, Walter Brennan. If I had told you in January, you would have driven to Craig's office that same afternoon and put your fist through his face. And then he would have called the police. He would have told them you were violent and unstable. He would have used it as proof that you needed to be put away. Confrontation without evidence is just noise, Walt. I needed to build the case first." She was right. I hated that she was right, but she was. "How much do you know?" I asked. "Enough to be scared," she said. She opened the third folder. Inside was a photocopy of a document that made my hands go cold. It was my contractor license. My state-issued professional engineering license, number 7421, with my name, my signature, and my seal. But this copy had been notarized 6 months ago, with a certification I had never authorized. "He copied your license," Dot said, her voice flat and steady. "He has been using it to sign off on construction contracts. Your name is on permits you have never seen, for projects you have never inspected." I picked up the photocopy. My hands were steady, but something inside my chest was not. My name, my seal, my 40-year reputation. Being stamped onto documents by a man who could not tell the difference between a load-bearing wall and a shower curtain. "How big?" I whispered. Dot pulled out the fourth folder. Bank records showing wire transfers, invoices from subcontractors, payment schedules from the city of Nashville. $2 million, she said. A contract with the metropolitan government for a pedestrian bridge in East Nashville. Craig bid on it using your license as the certifying engineer. He won the contract 8 months ago. He has already drawn $600,000 in advance payments. The number sat in the air between us like a grenade with the pin pulled. "And Walt," Dot said, reaching for the last folder, the thickest one. "That is not even the worst part. Look at what he is building with your name." Dot opened the last folder and spread the contents across my desk. Construction drawings, specification sheets, material orders, and at the center of it all, a full set of structural blueprints for a pedestrian bridge spanning the Cumberland River near the Shelby Bottoms Greenway in East Nashville. I leaned forward. The engineer in me took over before the grandfather or the husband could object. My eyes moved across the drawings the way they had moved across 10,000 blueprints before. Column spacing, beam depth, reinforcement schedules, load calculations. It took me less than 2 minutes to see it. The steel specifications called for grade A36 structural beams, but the material purchase orders in Dot's folder listed grade A500 rebar, substituted at half the required diameter. The concrete mix design was 30% below the compressive strength needed for a span of that length. And the foundation pilings. I had to read the numbers twice because I could not believe what I was seeing. They were 6 feet shallower than the soil report required. This was not cost-cutting. This was a death sentence, drawn in blue ink on white paper. "Dot," I said, and my voice sounded strange even to myself. "Do you know what neighborhood this bridge connects?" "The Shelby Bottoms residential area to the Greenway Trail," she said. "There is an elementary school on the west side. Children walk across that path every morning." I closed my eyes. I saw the bridge in my mind, not the way Craig saw it, as a line item on a profit sheet. I saw it the way an engineer sees it. I saw the hairline cracks that would appear in the concrete within 6 months. I saw the deflection in the beams under peak pedestrian load. I saw the moment, maybe 18 months from now, maybe 24, when a support column would buckle during a rainstorm and the entire span would drop into the river with whoever was standing on it. 20 people, maybe 30. School children with backpacks, joggers with headphones, mothers pushing strollers. And on every permit, every inspection sign-off, every certification of structural integrity, one name. Mine. "If that bridge collapses," I said, opening my eyes, "they will not come for Craig. They will come for me. My name is on every page." Dot nodded. She had already calculated this. She had been living with this knowledge for weeks, carrying it in silence, waiting for the right moment. I looked at her and felt something shift inside my chest. Not just love. Respect. The kind of respect you feel for someone who has been standing guard while you were sleeping. "There is one more thing," Dot said. She reached into the folder and pulled out a small note card. On it, in her handwriting, was a transcript of a conversation. "2 weeks ago," she said, "Jake and Emma came over to play while Megan ran errands. I was in the kitchen making them grilled cheese. Jake came up to my wheelchair and tugged on my sleeve. He said, 'Grandma, Daddy told Mommy that you and Grandpa are going to a special hotel. He said we will never see you again. Is that true?'" The words hit me like a physical blow. I gripped the edge of my desk. "Emma started crying," Dot continued, her voice steady but her jaw tight. "She said, 'I do not want Grandpa to go to the hotel. I want to stay here and build bridges with him.'" Build bridges with him. I stared at the blueprints on my desk. A bridge that could kill, built by a man who wanted to lock us away. And 2 10-year-old children who did not understand why their world was about to collapse. "I recorded it," Dot said, tapping the armrest of her wheelchair. "The camera caught everything. Jake's face, Emma's tears, every word." I looked at my wife. She looked back at me. Between us on the desk lay the evidence of a crime that could end lives, destroy reputations, and tear apart what was left of our family. "What do we do, Walt?" Dot asked. It was the first time in 3 months she had asked me that question. She had been carrying this alone, and now she was handing me the weight. I looked at the blueprints one more time. Then I rolled them up and placed them back in the folder. "First," I said, "I need to see that bridge with my own eyes." I left the house at 5 the next morning, while the sky was still the color of bruised plum. Dot was awake. She handed me a thermos of coffee and a baseball cap from the hall closet. "Wear this," she said. "You look less like an engineer and more like a retiree going fishing." She was right. Camouflage mattered. I drove east on Shelby Avenue, past the old brick warehouses that were being converted into breweries and yoga studios, until I reached the stretch of greenway that ran along the river. The construction site was fenced off with orange barriers and a large sign that read, "Cumberland Crossing Pedestrian Bridge, a project of Cumberland Horizon Construction, LLC." Below the company name, in smaller print, was a line that made my stomach turn. "Certifying engineer, Walter R. Brennan, P.E., my name. On a sign I had never authorized, for a project I had never seen, built by a man who had married my daughter to get access to my filing cabinet. I parked down the street and walked toward the site with the slow, aimless shuffle of a man with nowhere to be. The cap was pulled low. My hands were in my jacket pockets. To anyone watching, I was just another retiree killing time near the river. The bridge was roughly 70% complete. The main support columns were already poured, and the deck framework was going up on the eastern span. A crew of about 15 men was working under a foreman who was shouting instructions from a folding chair while scrolling through his phone. I leaned against the fence and watched. I did not need to get close. 40 years of field inspections had trained my eyes to read a structure from a distance the way a doctor reads an X-ray. And what I was reading made me sick. The support columns were too narrow for the span length. I could see it from 50 yards away. The formwork had been stripped too early, and there were already visible honeycombing patterns in the concrete surface. That meant air pockets. Air pockets meant weakness. Weakness in a load-bearing column meant failure under stress. I pulled out my phone and pretended to take a selfie with the river in the background. Instead, I zoomed in on the rebar cages stacked near the pour site. The bars were thinner than what the specifications called for. I took 6 photos. Then I walked casually along the fence line and photographed the concrete delivery truck parked near the mixer. The batch ticket was taped to the driver's side door. I zoomed in. The mix ratio confirmed what I had feared. It was a residential-grade blend, suitable for a backyard patio, not a pedestrian bridge carrying hundreds of people daily. I stood there, looking at the half-built bridge. The morning sun caught the river below it, turning the water gold. It was a beautiful setting for a catastrophe. I thought about the elementary school, 3 blocks west. I thought about the children who would walk across this span every morning, backpacks bouncing, shouting and laughing, trusting that the ground beneath their feet would hold. Because that is what children do. They trust the bridges built by the adults in their lives. And this bridge was going to betray that trust. I turned away and walked back to my car. My hands were shaking, not from the cold. I sat behind the wheel and pulled out my phone. I scrolled through my contacts until I found a name I had not called in 3 years. Frank Morrison, former colleague, current senior inspector for the Federal Highway Administration. The one man in Tennessee who had the authority and the backbone to shut down a construction project with a single phone call. I pressed dial. It rang twice. "Walt Brennan," Frank said, his voice like gravel in a cement mixer. "I thought you were retired." "I was," I said, staring at the bridge through my windshield. "Frank, I need your help. Someone is using my license to build a death trap. And if I do not stop it, the blood is on my hands." The line went quiet. 10 seconds of silence. It was the longest pause I had ever heard from Frank Morrison. "Tell me everything," he said. I sat in the driveway for 10 minutes after I got back from the bridge, just gripping the steering wheel. My hands still smelled like wet concrete and rust. When I finally walked inside, Dot was at the kitchen table with 2 cups of coffee and a look that told me she had not been idle. "You have a visitor coming," she said. "I called Earl this morning." Earl Harrison. Retired Army Criminal Investigation Division, 15 years out. After that, a decade of private security work for half the law firms in Nashville. 73 years old, built like a fire hydrant, and he had never once forgotten the face or a favor. I met Earl in 1992 when he was investigating procurement fraud at Fort Campbell and needed an engineer to explain a collapsed barracks roof. I explained it. He bought me a steak dinner. We had been friends ever since. He knocked on our back door at exactly 2:15. Old habit. "Walter," He shook my hand. Dorothy. He nodded to Dot with the kind of respect men of our generation reserve for women who scare them a little. Earl sat down, placed a brown envelope on the table, and looked at me with steady gray eyes. I have been watching your son-in-law for 11 days, he said. Dorothy called me 3 weeks ago. I did not ask why, because Dorothy does not waste people's time. I looked at Dot. She sipped her coffee and said nothing. He slid out a stack of 8 by 10 photographs, each time-stamped in his precise block handwriting. The first showed Craig's black pickup in the underground garage of the Belmont Hotel on Wedgwood Avenue. March 7th, 6:45 in the evening. The second showed Craig walking through the lobby with a tall, dark-haired woman in a charcoal suit carrying a leather briefcase. Vanessa Cole, Earl said. Age 41, real estate attorney, licensed in Tennessee and Georgia. Office on Music Row, but most of her real work happens in hotel lobbies and parking garages. The third photograph showed them in the hotel bar, leaning over documents. The fourth made my stomach turn. A close-up through a 200mm lens. The header read, Cumberland Horizon Construction, LLC, and below it, my name. Walter R. Brennan, licensed professional engineer. My forged signature at the bottom like a bruise. 7 meetings in 11 days, Earl said. She created the shell company. She notarized the forged license. And she has been moving money. He placed a summary sheet on the table. $2 million in contract funding. $600,000 drawn as advances. Only $190,000 accounted for in materials and labor. The remaining $410,000 transferred to 3 accounts managed by Vanessa Cole's office. $350,000 went to a bookmaker named Darren Voss for Craig's gambling debts. $60,000 to Vanessa as her 20% fee. Earl pulled a small digital recorder from his jacket. Last Tuesday, booth behind them at the Belmont bar. 3 bourbons in. He pressed play. Craig's voice filled our kitchen, slurred and boastful. The old man has no idea. By the time the bridge opens, I will have cleared every debt I owe. And if anything goes wrong, guess whose name is on every document? Not mine. Then he laughed. The laugh of a man who believed he was untouchable. Earl stopped the recording. The kitchen went silent. Frank Morrison is expecting my call tonight, I said. But now I am thinking we need more than a federal inspector. We need a lawyer. And we need a plan that makes Craig walk into his own trap. Dot wheeled herself toward the hallway. I will make a fresh pot, she said. We are going to be up late. We sat around that kitchen table until almost midnight. Dot had brewed 3 pots of coffee by then, and the ashtray Earl brought from the porch held 4 cigarette butts he swore would be his last. Frank Morrison was on speakerphone, his voice tinny through the old landline, and I had my reading glasses on because the numbers in front of me were small and the consequences behind them were enormous. Walk me through the money one more time, Frank said. Earl spread the documents like a dealer laying out cards. The structure was elegant in the way a trap is elegant. Vanessa Cole had incorporated Cumberland Horizon Construction LLC in November of last year, using a registered agent service in Knoxville. The company's sole listed officer was a man named Gerald Pace, a retired plumber in Chattanooga who had no idea his name was on anything. His social security number had been purchased from a data broker for $400. The operating agreement gave full signature authority to Craig Holloway as managing member. And every engineering document, every permit application, every inspection waiver bore my name and license number. Vanessa had built a wall of paper between Craig and the money, and she had put me on the wrong side of it. The contract with the city is $2 million even, I said. Dispersed in 4 draws. First draw, $600,000, released in January. Second draw, $500,000, scheduled for April 15th. And the first draw? Frank asked. Gone, Earl said. 190,000 went to actual construction. The other 410,000 moved through 3 intermediary accounts. 350,000 ended up with Darren Voss. 60,000 went to Vanessa, disguised as legal consulting fees. Frank was quiet. If the second draw releases in April, Craig will have another 500,000. That is his exit money, which is why he needs the bridge to pass inspection, I said. And why he needs my license to stay clean. Dot had been listening from the end of the table, her reading glasses perched on her nose, a yellow legal pad on her lap. She had not spoken in 20 minutes, which meant she was thinking. And when Dorothy Brennan was thinking, smart people waited. "There is something else," she said. She flipped the legal pad around. In her careful librarian's handwriting, she had drawn a timeline. 3 columns: dates, actions, deadlines. I found this in the second folder. A draft petition for emergency guardianship, filed with Davidson County Probate Court. The petitioner is Megan Holloway, and the respondents are Walter and Dorothy Brennan. The room went still. "They are trying to have us declared incompetent," Dot continued, her voice as level as a surveyor's line. "The petition claims Walt shows signs of cognitive decline and that I am physically incapable of managing our affairs. It requests Megan be appointed legal guardian with full authority over our finances, property, and medical decisions." "Who prepared it?" I asked, though I already knew. "Vanessa Cole. Her office address is on the filing, and according to the date, they plan to submit within 45 days. Mid-April, the same deadline as the second draw. Craig needed guardianship over our assets, and the bridge inspection approved in the same window. One gave him our savings in the house, the other gave him $500,000 more dollars. Together, they gave him everything he needed to disappear. "He is not just stealing from us," I said quietly. "He is erasing us." Earl crushed his cigarette. "Frank, what do you need to shut this down?" "A confession," Frank said. "Recorded, voluntary. Something that ties Craig directly to the fraudulent permits and the money. A drunk man bragging is not the same as a sober man admitting. I need him in a room, clear-headed, saying the words." I looked at Dot. She looked at me. 46 years of marriage means you can have an entire conversation without opening your mouth. "Then we give him a room," I said. They came at 4:30 on a Wednesday, which told me everything. People who are afraid come at odd hours. People who think they have already won come bearing gifts in daylight. Megan carried a bouquet of yellow tulips from the grocery store on Hillsborough Pike. Craig carried a smile that did not reach his eyes. "Dad," Megan said, kissing my cheek, "we just wanted to check on you and Mom." I stood in the doorway and let my mouth hang open half a second too long. Then I blinked twice, slowly, like a man trying to remember where he was. "Megan," I said. Then I looked at Craig. I let my eyes go soft. "And you are Kevin, right? Megan's friend from college?" "There is no Kevin." I watched Craig's face. A flicker of surprise, then something worse. Satisfaction. "It is Craig, Walt. Your son-in-law." He said it loudly and slowly, the way people speak to children or dogs. "Craig, right, of course." I nodded too many times. "Come in." Dot is in the living room. "What day is it? Is it Sunday?" "Wednesday, Dad," Megan said softly. She glanced at Craig. It was the glance of two people confirming a diagnosis they had already written. I shuffled toward the living room, making my steps shorter than they needed to be. 41 years of engineering taught me that every structure reveals its weakness through small movements. I was showing them small movements. Dot was in her wheelchair by the window, reading a novel. She looked up and smiled warmly, but did not overplay it. That is the difference between an amateur and a librarian who spent 30 years managing people without raising her voice. Craig took the armchair closest to the door, legs spread wide, one arm draped over the side like he owned the room. I asked Megan if she wanted coffee. She said no. I asked again 2 minutes later. Craig's eyebrows went up. "Walt," he said, leaning forward with practiced concern. "Have you been sleeping okay? You seem foggy today." "Foggy?" I scratched my head. "I slept fine. What day did you say it was?" "Wednesday." "Right." I paused. "Is it Sunday?" Craig sat back and looked at Megan. I could almost hear the gears turning behind his eyes, calculating how fast they could push the guardianship petition. Then he stood. "I am going to grab some water." He walked toward the kitchen. Megan followed. They thought they were out of earshot. They thought the old man was staring at the carpet, trying to remember his own name. But the camera in the right armrest of Dot's wheelchair was pointed directly at the kitchen doorway. The microphone picked up whispers at 15 feet. Earl had installed it himself. Craig's voice came through low and certain. "You see that? The old man is done. Sunrise Valley is the only place for him. We just need him to sign that paper, and we are free." Megan said nothing. I could not see her face, but I heard the silence. It was not agreement. It was the silence of a woman standing in a room with a man she was afraid of. They came back smiling. Craig clapped my shoulder like I was a retired horse he was putting out to pasture. "We will come by this weekend, Walt. Take it easy." "That would be nice," I said, letting my voice trail off. "Craig, right?" He laughed. Megan did not. I watched their car disappear around the bend on Granny White Pike, counted to 30. Then I turned to Dot. Every trace of the confused old man was gone. My voice came out flat and precise, the voice I used on inspections when I found a crack in a load-bearing beam. "Did you get it?" Dot reached into the armrest, tilted the screen toward me, and pressed play. Craig's voice filled the room, clear as a church bell. "The old man is done. Sunrise Valley is the only place for him." "Every word," she said. The doorbell rang at 9:15 the next morning. I was expecting Earl. I was not expecting the man standing on my porch in a white coat with a clipboard and a name tag that read, Dr. Richard Thorne, Behavioral Health Specialist. He was about 50, clean-shaven, with the kind of practiced smile that belongs on a pharmaceutical brochure. Behind him, parked at the curb, was a silver sedan with a magnetic sign on the door that read, Middle Tennessee Cognitive Assessment Services. "Mr. Brennan," he said, "I am Dr. Thorne. Your daughter arranged a routine wellness evaluation. Just a few questions, nothing invasive. May I come in?" I had not agreed to any evaluation. Megan had not mentioned any evaluation. But I remembered what Earl told me on the phone the night before. They will move fast now. They need a medical opinion on paper before they can file the guardianship petition. If someone shows up claiming to be a doctor, let him in. Let him see what he came to see. So I opened the door wide, shuffled back in my slippers, and let Dr. Richard Thorne into my living room. Dot was in her wheelchair near the bookshelf, her blanket over her knees, the novel open on her lap. She looked up with polite confusion, as if she could not quite place why a stranger was in her house. She was magnificent. Thorne sat on the couch and opened his clipboard. He asked me what year it was. I said 2022. It was 2024. He wrote something down. He asked me to count backward from 100 by sevens. I made it to 79 and then stopped and asked him what the question was again. He wrote something down. He asked me to draw a clock face showing 2:45. I drew the circle, put the numbers in the wrong positions, and placed both hands pointing at 12. He wrote a great deal down. Every wrong answer was deliberate. Every pause was calculated. I have built bridges that span rivers and hold the weight of 10,000 vehicles a day. I can count backward from 100 by sevens in my sleep. But Dr. Richard Thorne did not need to know that. Dot let her hands tremble slightly on the armrests. "My daughter helps with most things now," she said. "I get confused with the computer." Dot built our household filing system in 1986 and had managed every tax return, every insurance claim, and every mortgage payment for 38 years without a single error. But Dr. Thorne did not need to know that either. The evaluation lasted 40 minutes. Thorne asked 32 questions. I know because Dot counted them. When he finished, he closed his clipboard and gave me that pharmaceutical smile again. "Nothing to worry about, Mr. Brennan. Just routine. I will send my report to your daughter." He did not send it to me. He did not ask for my consent. He did not leave a copy. In the state of Tennessee, a legitimate cognitive assessment requires informed consent, a licensed geriatric specialist, and a minimum 2-session evaluation with at least 72 hours between sessions. Dr. Thorne had done none of these things. After his sedan pulled away, I stood at the window and read the license plate aloud while Dot typed it into her phone. Earl answered on the second ring. "Silver sedan, magnetic sign. Middle Tennessee Cognitive Assessment Services," I said. Earl called back in 40 minutes. There was no Dr. Richard Thorne licensed in Tennessee. There was no practice called Middle Tennessee Cognitive Assessment Services. The license plate belonged to a rental car picked up 2 days ago from a Hertz location on Broadway. The card used to rent it was issued to an account managed by Vanessa Cole's office. "She bought a fake doctor," I said to Dot. Dot closed her novel and placed it on the shelf. "That report will say we are both incompetent. Megan will attach it to the guardianship petition. A judge could sign an emergency order within a week." "How long do we have?" "Days," Dot said. "Not weeks." Earl called at 2 in the afternoon with a voice that told me he had not slept. "I need you to sit down for this one, Walter." I was already sitting. Dot wheeled herself closer to the kitchen table, where I had the phone on speaker. Earl spoke carefully, the way a man speaks when he knows every word matters. "Last night I went back to Craig and Megan's house on Woodmont Boulevard. Megan took the kids to her Wednesday evening church group. Craig was at the Belmont Hotel again with Vanessa. The house was empty for 2 hours. I did not ask how Earl got inside. There are questions you do not ask a man who spent 20 years in criminal investigations. "The twins' bedroom," Earl said. "Jake and Emma. There is a toy box in the corner, the big plastic kind with a yellow lid. Underneath the stuffed animals, inside a zippered compartment of an old teddy bear, I found a USB drive. Taped to it was a folded piece of notebook paper. Earl had copied the contents of the USB onto his own secure drive and left the original exactly where he found it. He brought the copies to our house within the hour. What I saw on that drive changed everything I thought I understood about my daughter. The USB contained 14 photographs. Every one of them showed bruises on Megan's body. Arms, shoulders, ribs, the back of her neck. Each photo had been taken in what looked like the bathroom mirror, time-stamped by the phone's camera. The earliest was dated 11 months ago. The most recent was 9 days ago. 11 months of evidence, hidden inside a teddy bear in her children's toy box. The one place Craig would never look. Dot made a sound beside me. It was quiet, almost nothing. but I had been married to her for 46 years, and I knew what it meant. It was the sound of a mother's heart splitting down the center. The folded notebook paper was a letter, Megan's handwriting. I recognized it from 20 years of birthday cards and grocery lists on the refrigerator. The letter was addressed to no one. Or maybe to everyone. Earl read it aloud because my hands were shaking too hard to hold the paper steady. I do not know who will find this. I am writing it because I need someone to know the truth. Craig hits me. He has been hitting me since before the twins were born. I have tried to leave 3 times. Each time he told me he would take Jake and Emma and I would never see them again. He told me no judge would give custody to a woman whose parents are too old and too sick to help her. I believe him because he has a lawyer who can make anything happen. I am afraid of him every single day. I do what he tells me to do because I do not see another way. If you are reading this, please help my children. They are good kids. They deserve better than what I have given them. I am sorry, Dad. I am sorry, Mom. I wanted to be brave, but I was not. Earl stopped reading. The kitchen was silent for a long time. I sat there staring at the table, and I thought about Megan at 8 years old, standing on a step stool in the garage, handing me wrenches while I fixed the lawnmower. She had been brave then. She had always been brave. What Craig had done was not remove her courage. He had convinced her it did not exist. Dot took off her reading glasses, folded them, and placed them on the table with the precision of a woman who needed to control one small thing in a world that had just lost its axis. "We are not just saving ourselves anymore," she said. "We are saving her." I picked up the phone and called Earl back. "The plan does not change," I said. "But the timeline does. We move this week." We gathered at 6 in the morning. The coffee was already made. Dot had set out 4 cups, 4 napkins, and a plate of toast that nobody touched. Earl arrived first, wearing the same jacket he had worn the night before. Frank Morrison arrived 10 minutes later, having driven from his office in Franklin before sunrise. The 4th chair was for a woman none of us had met in person until that morning. Her name was Louise Chen, 61 years old, former federal prosecutor, now in private practice on Church Street. Earl had worked with her on 3 cases in the last decade and said she was the only lawyer in Nashville who scared him. She was small, silver-haired, and she sat down at our kitchen table the way a surgeon sits down before an operation. No small talk. No wasted motion. "Show me everything," she said. We laid it out. All of it. Dot's 6 folders. Earl's photographs from the Belmont Hotel. The audio recording of Craig at the bar. The fake doctor's visit. The guardianship petition draft. The USB from the teddy bear. Megan's letter. My photographs from the bridge site. Frank's preliminary assessment of the structural violations. Louise spent 45 minutes reading every document without speaking. When she finished, she took off her glasses, placed them on the table, and looked at each of us in turn. "You have enough to destroy him," she said. "But if we go to the authorities right now, Craig will know someone tipped them off. He will destroy what he can, move what money is left, and Vanessa Cole will have every document shredded before lunch. We get one shot at this. One." "What do you need?" I asked. Craig in a room, sober, on camera, confirming the fraud with his own mouth. Not bragging to a bartender, confirming. To someone he believes is on his side. Frank nodded. "I have been coordinating with the FBI field office here in Nashville. If we deliver a recorded confession tied to the bridge fraud, they will move the same day. They are already aware of the structural violations. What they lack is the direct link between Craig and the forged permits." Louise opened her briefcase and placed a single sheet of paper on the table. It was an invitation, printed on heavy cream stock, embossed with the letterhead of Cumberland Horizon Construction. "Craig has scheduled an investor meeting for this Friday," she said. A signing ceremony for the second draw of the bridge contract. $500,000. The meeting is at the Pinnacle Tower on 4th Avenue, Conference Room 3112. Craig, Vanessa Cole, and a representative from the city's infrastructure office will be present. How did you get this? Earl asked. Louise smiled for the first time. It was not a warm smile. Vanessa Cole's paralegal has been looking for a new job. She found one. In my office. She starts Monday. The plan took shape over the next 2 hours. Frank would coordinate with the FBI to have agents positioned in the building. Earl would handle surveillance and communications. Louise would prepare the legal documents needed to freeze Craig's accounts the moment the arrest warrants were signed. And Dot would provide the final piece. The investor meeting requires Walt's signature as the licensed engineer of record, Louise said. Craig cannot complete the second draw without it. He will need you in that room. He will invite me, I said. After what he saw on Wednesday, he thinks I will sign anything he puts in front of me. And when you are in that room, Louise continued, you will not sign your name. You will write something else entirely. Dot reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. Her fingers were thin but steady. Friday, she said. It was not a question. Friday, I said. The phone rang at 3:17 in the afternoon. I was sitting on the porch with a glass of sweet tea, watching the dogwood trees sway in the March wind. Dot was inside, sorting her folders one final time. I let it ring 4 times before I picked up. A confused old man does not rush to answer the phone. Walt? It is Craig. His voice was warm, friendly. The kind of voice a man uses when he needs something from someone he does not respect. Craig, I said. I let the name come out slow, as if I was pulling it from somewhere deep and dusty. How are you, son? I am great, Walt. Listen, I have a little business thing tomorrow, a meeting downtown. Nothing complicated, just some paperwork for a construction project. But they need your signature as the engineer on record. Just a formality. My signature? Right, just your name on a couple of pages. Takes 5 minutes. I will pick you up at 9 in the morning. We will be home by lunch. I paused long enough to make him wonder if I had forgotten the conversation. Then I said, Will there be coffee? Craig laughed. It was the laugh of a man who had just been handed a gift he did not deserve. All the coffee you want, Walt. Okay then, 9 o'clock. I will wear my good jacket. You do that, Walt. He hung up. I set the phone down on the porch railing and stared at the dogwood trees for another full minute. Then I went inside and closed the door. Friday morning, I told Dot. 9 o'clock, Pinnacle Tower. He thinks he is bringing a senile old man to sign away $500,000. Dot nodded once. She had already known. The paralegal in Louise Chen's office had confirmed the meeting details an hour earlier. Craig's call was simply the last piece clicking into place. That evening we sat together in the living room and did not talk about the plan. We had spent 3 days talking about the plan. Every angle had been examined, every contingency mapped. Earl had tested the recording equipment twice. Frank had confirmed the FBI team would be in position by 8:30. Louise had filed the emergency motions to freeze Craig's accounts, sealed until the moment of arrest. Everything was ready. So instead of talking about the plan, we talked about other things. Dot asked me if I remembered the first bridge I ever built. I told her it was not a bridge. It was a culvert replacement on Highway 41 outside Clarksville. 1983. I was 28 years old and convinced I was going to change the world one concrete pour at a time. You did change the world, Dot said. You just did it quietly. I looked at her in that wheelchair, her reading glasses on top of her head, the 6 manila folders stacked neatly on the side table, like ammunition waiting to be loaded. This woman had spent 3 months collecting evidence while sitting in a chair she could not leave. She had watched our daughter being manipulated, our grandchildren being used, our name being stolen, and she had not panicked. She had not called the police in a moment of rage. She had built a case the way I build bridges, one beam at a time, one connection at a time, until the structure could hold the weight of the truth.
Dot, I said.
Yes? When this is over, I'm going to build you a ramp for the garden, a proper one, with handrails. She smiled. Not the careful smile she had worn for Craig and Megan and the fake doctor. A real one. The kind that still made me feel like I was 28 years old, standing in the rain on Highway 41, believing I could build something that would last. I would like that, she said. I turned off the lamp at 10. Neither of us slept much. But we held hands in the dark, and that was enough. Craig pulled into our driveway at exactly 9 in his black pickup, freshly washed, tires shining. He was wearing a navy suit I had never seen before, and a tie that probably cost more than our grocery bill for the month. He looked like a man about to close the biggest deal of his life. He just did not know which side of the deal he was on. I came out in my old brown sport coat, the one Dot had pressed the night before. I gripped the porch railing and let my feet find each step, as if the ground might shift beneath me. Craig jogged up and took my elbow like a dutiful son-in-law. "Looking sharp, Walt." "Is it Sunday?" I asked. He smiled and opened the passenger door. We drove down Granny White Pike toward downtown. Craig talked the entire way. The weather, a restaurant on 12th Avenue, the Titans draft picks. He did not mention the bridge or the $500,000 waiting at the end of this drive. He was performing for an audience of one confused old man who could not tell Tuesday from Saturday. I watched Nashville through the window, old neighborhoods giving way to cranes and glass towers south of Broadway. I had built pieces of this city for 4 decades. Overpasses, pedestrian walkways, reinforced foundations beneath buildings people entered every day without thinking about what held them up. That is infrastructure. When it works, nobody notices. When it fails, everybody pays. Pinnacle Tower rose 32 stories above 4th Avenue. Craig parked in the underground garage and came around to open my door. "Careful, Walt. Floor's slick." "Thank you, son," I said, steadying myself on his hand. "Craig, right?" "That is right, Walt." We rode the elevator to the 31st floor in silence. Craig checked his reflection in the polished doors and straightened his tie. I stood beside him with my shoulders rounded, chin dipped toward my chest, the posture of a man who had already surrendered. The doors opened onto a carpeted hallway. Conference room 3112 was at the end, visible through a glass wall. A long mahogany table set with leather folders, water pitchers, crystal glasses. 2 people were already inside. Vanessa Cole sat at the far end in a charcoal suit, briefcase open beside her. Sharp, composed, exactly like Earl's photographs. Next to her, a man in a gray suit with a city lanyard. The infrastructure office representative. Craig put his hand on my back. "Here we are, Walt. Just a few signatures and we are done. Easy as pie." I shuffled forward. My heart was beating at 72 beats per minute. I know because I counted. An engineer counts everything. Somewhere in this building, Frank Morrison sat with 2 FBI agents and a laptop showing 4 camera feeds. Earl was parked in a gray van on 4th Avenue with a directional antenna aimed at the 31st floor. Louise Chen was in the lobby holding a sealed envelope of emergency freeze orders for every account tied to Cumberland Horizon Construction. And Dot was at home in her wheelchair, watching a live feed from the camera Earl had sewn into the lapel of my brown sport coat. I walked into conference room 3112 the way I have walked onto 100 bridge sites. steady, alert, measuring every beam and every bolt. "Good morning," I said, and let my voice wobble just enough. Craig pulled out a chair for me at the near end of the table, the seat farthest from the door. A small gesture, but I noticed it. A man who controls where you sit controls how fast you can leave. "Everyone, this is my father-in-law, Walter Brennan," Craig said. "Walt is the licensed professional engineer on the Cumberland Crossing project. Walt, you know how these things go. Just a few signatures." I did not know Vanessa Cole. I was not supposed to know her. So I looked at her with the blank politeness of a man meeting a stranger and said, "Hello, ma'am." "Mr. Brennan," she said. Her voice was smooth and measured. "Thank you for coming in. We just need your authorization on a few documents to release the next phase of funding." The man with the city lanyard introduced himself as Dennis Waller, project liaison for the Metro Nashville Department of Public Works. He shook my hand with a firm grip and the distracted smile of a bureaucrat who wanted to be somewhere else. I decided Dennis Waller was not part of the scheme. He was simply a man doing his job, trusting that the signatures in front of him were legitimate. Vanessa opened a leather folder and spread 4 documents across the table. She turned each one to face me and placed a silver pen beside the first page. "This is the draw request for Phase 2, she said, pointing to the top document. $500,000 for materials, labor, and project management through June. Your signature confirms that the engineering specifications have been met and the project is on schedule." I picked up the document and held it close to my face, squinting. I turned it sideways. I put it down and picked up the second document instead. "What is this one?" I asked. "That is the inspection waiver," Vanessa said patiently. "It authorizes a modified inspection timeline based on your professional assessment." "Modified," I repeated, as if the word confused me. Craig leaned in. "It just means the inspection happens a little later, Walt. Gives the crew more time. Nothing unusual." The third document was a contractor certification form. The fourth was a financial release that would transfer $500,000 from the city's infrastructure escrow account to Cumberland Horizon Construction's operating account, managed by Vanessa Cole. 4 documents, 4 signatures, $500,000, and the lives of every person who would ever walk across that bridge. I picked up the silver pen. I held it the way a man holds a pen when his fingers do not quite work the way they used to. I brought it to the first page and let the tip hover over the signature line. "Right here?" I asked, pointing to the line. "Right there, Walt," Craig said. His voice was warm and encouraging, like a parent coaching a child through a spelling test. I set the pen down. "I need my glasses," I said. "Left them in the truck." Craig's jaw tightened for just a moment. Then the smile came back. "No problem. I will go grab them. And maybe some coffee?" I added. "You said there would be coffee." Craig looked at Vanessa. She nodded almost imperceptibly. He stood, buttoned his jacket, and walked out of the conference room. His footsteps faded down the carpeted hallway toward the elevator. The moment he was gone, I stopped squinting. I sat up straight in my chair and looked directly at Vanessa Cole. She noticed. Something shifted behind her eyes. A flicker, barely visible, like a hairline crack in a concrete beam that only an engineer would catch. I picked up the silver pen again. This time I held it the way I have held pens for 41 years. Like a man who knows exactly what he is about to write. Vanessa Cole stared at me for 3 seconds. In a courtroom, 3 seconds is nothing. In a conference room on the 31st floor with $500,000 on the table, 3 seconds is a lifetime. "Mr. Brennan," she said carefully, "are you all right?" I did not answer her. I listened to Craig's footsteps returning down the hallway. The elevator had been fast. He walked back in, holding my reading glasses in one hand and a paper cup of coffee in the other. He set both in front of me with the patience of a man who could afford to wait 5 more minutes for everything he wanted. "Here you go, Walt," Glasses and coffee. I put on the glasses. I took a sip of the coffee. Then I pulled the first document toward me, the draw request for $500,000, and I uncapped the silver pen. Craig leaned back in his chair and folded his arms. Vanessa watched my hand. Dennis Waller checked his phone under the table. I placed the pen on the signature line. And I wrote, in clear, steady block letters, the way I have labeled engineering drawings for 4 decades. Fraud. Title 18, United States Code, Section 1341. Wire fraud. Section 1344. Bank fraud. Section 512. Forgery of a state-issued professional license. I moved to the second document, the inspection waiver, and wrote, criminal, negligent, endangerment of public safety. Cumberland Cross, remember of the day. Considerment to be in generally better. One color trace, endangerment of the state. Mystery general, made depending before minutes. Criminal, negligent, Cumberland Crossing pedestrian bridge. Load capacity, 40% of minimum requirement. I moved to the third document, the contractor certification. Identity theft. Unauthorized use of professional engineering license number 7421. Walter R. Brennan did not authorize, inspect, or approve any work performed by Cumberland Horizon Construction, LLC. I moved to the fourth document, the financial release, and wrote embezzlement. $410,000 diverted. $350,000 to Darren Voss. $60,000 to Vanessa Cole. $0 to structural integrity. The room was silent. I could hear the air conditioning humming through the vents. I could hear Dennis Waller's phone buzzing against his thigh. I could hear Craig breathing. I capped the pen, set it down, and looked up. Craig's face had gone white. Not the white of anger. The white of a man who has just realized that the floor beneath him is not solid. That it never was. What the hell is this? He whispered. This, I said, and my voice was not wobbling anymore, is what an engineer writes when he finds a structure built on fraud. Vanessa Cole was already closing her briefcase. Her hands moved fast, the trained reflex of a woman who had exited bad situations before. She pushed her chair back and stood. Sit down, Miss Cole, I said. She did not sit down. She took one step toward the door. I would not do that, I said. There are 2 FBI agents in the hallway. There have been since 8:30 this morning. Vanessa stopped. Her hand was on the briefcase handle. Her knuckles were white. Craig stood up so fast his chair hit the glass wall behind him. You are insane. You are a confused old man who does not know what day it is. It is Friday, I said. March 14th. The temperature outside is 58 degrees. Your company has stolen $410,000 of public funds. Your bridge will collapse within 18 months. And my name is Walter Raymond Brennan, professional engineer, license number 7421, and I have never been confused a day in my life. Craig looked at the door. Then he looked at me. Then he looked at the documents covered in my handwriting. And I watched him understand, one piece at a time, that the useless old man had just ended his world. The conference room door opened. S.K. Muisal, Vitlai. FBI Bukvau va Batzu. 2 men in dark suits walked through the door. They moved the way water moves through a cracked dam. Calm, inevitable, impossible to stop. Behind them came Frank Morrison, with a federal inspection order and his FHWA credentials. Behind Frank, a third agent, a woman with short auburn hair and a badge on her belt. Craig Holloway. The first agent spoke without raising his voice. I am Special Agent Davis, FBI Nashville Division. You are under arrest for wire fraud, bank fraud, and conspiracy to commit fraud against the United States. Place your hands on the table. Craig did not move. His mouth opened and closed without sound. His eyes went to Vanessa. She was standing by her chair, briefcase in hand, perfectly still. The stillness of a woman calculating her last options and finding none. Vanessa Cole, the second agent said, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, money laundering, and forgery of a state-issued professional license. Vanessa set the briefcase down with the precision of someone placing a final chess piece. She extended both wrists and let the agent apply the handcuffs with the quiet dignity of a woman who had always known this day was possible and had simply bet against it. Craig found his voice. This is a setup. Walt does not know what he is doing. He is mentally incompetent. Ask anyone. He cannot even remember my name. Special Agent Davis looked at me. My name is Walter Raymond Brennan, I said. Born June 15th, 1953. Professional engineer, State of Tennessee. License number 7421. I have designed or supervised 47 bridges, 12 overpasses, and 9 pedestrian structures across the southeastern United States. I can recite the load specifications for every one of them from memory. I paused. I can also count backward from 100 by sevens. Would you like to hear it? Davis almost smiled. Craig pointed his finger at my chest. You lied to me. You pretended to be senile. This is entrapment. It is not entrapment when a private citizen deceives a criminal, Frank Morrison said from the doorway. It is acting. And your father-in-law deserves an award. Davis handcuffed Craig. The metal clicked shut, and Craig flinched. A small flinch, but I saw it. The flinch of a man who had spent his adult life avoiding consequences and had just run out of room. They led Vanessa out first. Her heels clicked against the marble in a steady rhythm, like a metronome, counting the final measures of a song she had been composing for years. Then they brought Craig past me. He stopped and looked at my face. His eyes were wet. Not with remorse, with fury. The kind that comes from being outsmarted by someone you had dismissed. Useless old man, he whispered. Careful, son, I said. That useless old man just brought down your bridge. Dennis Waller sat frozen at the table, phone in hand, mouth open. He had not moved since I wrote the first word on the first document. I felt sorry for Dennis. He was going to have a long afternoon explaining to his supervisors how he ended up in a room full of federal agents. The conference room emptied. I stood alone by the mahogany table, looking at 4 documents covered in my handwriting. My hand was steady. My coffee was cold. It was not over yet. Craig was still in handcuffs when the elevator chimed. The doors opened, and Earl pushed Dot's wheelchair into the hallway. Behind them, Megan stepped out in jeans and a gray sweater with sleeves pulled past her wrists. She had come. I do not know if Earl brought her, or if she had been waiting in the lobby the entire time. It did not matter. She was here. Megan looked through the glass wall of the conference room and saw Craig standing between 2 FBI agents, his wrists bound behind his back. She stopped walking. Her whole body went rigid, the way a person's body goes rigid when it remembers every blow it has ever absorbed. Dot reached back and took Megan's hand. She did not say a word. She just held it. I want to go in, Megan said. Special Agent Davis looked at me. I nodded. Davis stepped aside. Earl pushed Dot's wheelchair through the conference room door. Megan walked beside her mother, one hand on the armrest, the other curled into a fist at her side. They stopped 6 feet from Craig, close enough to see his face, far enough that he could not reach them. Craig looked at Megan the way he always looked at her. Ownership. Control. Even in handcuffs, his eyes said the same thing they had been saying for years. You belong to me. Megan, he said, tell them this is a mistake. Tell them your father is senile. You know the truth. Megan did not speak. Not yet. She stood there, and I watched something move behind her eyes. 11 months of photographs hidden inside a teddy bear. 3 failed attempts to leave. A letter addressed to no one. Every silent dinner. Every long sleeve in the middle of summer. "I do know the truth," she said. Her voice was thin, but it did not break. "The truth is, you hit me for the first time 2 weeks before the twins were born. The truth is, you told me no one would believe me. The truth is, I believed you." Craig's jaw tightened. "Megan, stop. The truth is, I stopped believing you 3 months ago," she continued. "When Mom called me into the kitchen and showed me what you had done with Dad's name. That was when I started hiding the photographs." Dot squeezed Megan's hand. Megan squeezed back. Craig's face shifted. The ownership drained out of his eyes, and something else replaced it. Fear. Not fear of the FBI agents behind him or the federal charges ahead of him. Fear of a woman who was no longer afraid. Megan looked down at her left hand. The gold wedding band caught the fluorescent light. She twisted it off slowly, the way you remove a bandage from a wound that is finally closed. She held it in her palm for a moment. Then she stepped forward, took Craig's cuffed hand, and pressed the ring into his fingers. "I am done," she said. Craig stared at the ring in his hand. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. For the first time since I had known him, Craig Holloway had no words. Davis took Craig's arm. "Time to go." They led him toward the elevator. He did not look back. The ring was still in his fist. Megan watched him go with dry eyes. She had done all her crying in hallways and bathrooms for 11 months. She was finished crying for Craig Holloway. Dot pulled Megan's hand to her cheek and held it there. "You were brave today," she said. "I learned it from you," Megan whispered. I stood behind Dot's wheelchair and placed my hands on the grips. My daughter stood beside her mother. Earl held the elevator. "Let us go home," I said. We rode down 31 floors in silence. Not the heavy silence of grief, the quiet silence of people who have survived something together and do not need to explain it. We pulled into the driveway on Granny White Pike at 11:30. Megan sat in the passenger seat for a full minute before she opened the door. This house had been her home for 18 years before Craig. Walking back through that door meant admitting every step since leaving it had led her the wrong way. Louise Chin called at noon. Temporary custody granted to Megan. Craig had no visitation pending trial. Guardianship petition dismissed. 3 sentences that changed everything. Megan brought the twins home before dinner. We ate pot roast at the kitchen table. Nobody mentioned Craig. Jake talked about a volcano science project. Emma helped Dot sort puzzle pieces. It was the first meal in that kitchen without fear, sitting in an empty chair. The next morning I opened the garage workshop. Dusty workbench, tools hanging on the pegboard, the smell of cedar and machine oil the way it had been for 30 years. I pulled out 2 pieces of poplar, set up the hand plane, and waited. Jake appeared at 8:15. Emma behind him. "What are you doing, Grandpa?" "Building something. Want to learn?" I showed Jake how to hold the plane. Both hands, push with the grain, never against it. Clumsy at first, but by the 3rd pass he found the rhythm. A long, clean ribbon of wood peeled off and floated to the floor. "I did it," he said. Emma was more cautious. I placed my hands over hers, the way my father had placed his over mine in a garage in Clarksville 55 years ago. We pushed together. The shaving came out perfect. "What are we building?" she asked. "A birdhouse. Every good house needs a blueprint. We will draw one together." Emma drew the blueprint on graph paper with colored pencils. Dimensions, materials, angles. She was a natural. Dot watched from the doorway in her wheelchair, coffee in hand, saying nothing, but missing nothing. We worked for 2 hours. Jake planed 4 boards. Emma labeled every piece on her drawing the way I had taught her. 3 generations in one garage. My father's hands teaching mine, my hands teaching theirs. Some things do not need words. At noon, Megan came to call us for lunch. I almost did not notice at first. Then I did, and I had to look away because my eyes were not cooperating. She was wearing a short-sleeved shirt. White cotton. No sweater. No sleeves pulled past her wrists. The bruises were still there, yellow and green on her forearms, fading but visible. She was not hiding them. For the first time in 11 months, my daughter walked into a room without covering what had been done to her. She did not announce it. She did not explain. She stood in the doorway of my workshop with her arms bare and said, "Lunch is ready." Dot saw it too. She looked at Megan's arms, then at Megan's face, then at me. 46 years of marriage. No words necessary. Megan looked down at her own arms, as if seeing them for the first time. Then she looked at her children kneeling on the garage floor, surrounded by wood shavings and colored pencils. And something settled in her face. Not happiness. Not yet. But the space where happiness could grow. "Come on, kids," she said. "Wash your hands." They gave me a white hard hat, the same kind I had worn on every job site for 41 years. But this one felt different. This one was not for building. This one was for tearing down. The construction site had been sealed since Friday. Yellow federal tape across every access point. Frank Morrison stood near the east barricade with 2 FHWA inspectors and a crew from the Army Corps of Engineers. 3 television vans lined Shelby Avenue with satellite dishes raised like mechanical sunflowers. The demolition order sat on a folding table. 1 page. My name at the top, Frank's federal citation below, and a single sentence. This structure poses an imminent threat to public safety and shall be demolished immediately. I signed it. Walter Raymond Brennan. My real signature. The first honest mark my name had made on any document connected to this bridge. The foreman signaled the excavator. A Caterpillar 340, 60,000 pounds of steel and hydraulics. The boom swung toward the nearest support column, the one I had photographed 6 days earlier. The bucket hung in the air for a moment, then struck. The sound was a deep, wet crack, like a bone breaking inside a body. The column split, and chunks of concrete tumbled toward the water. Inside the break, I could see the rebar. Thin, cheap, exactly what no bridge in America should ever contain. The excavator swung again. The second column buckled sideways. Steel groaned. Concrete crumbled. Everything Craig had built was returning to the earth it should never have left in that condition. I felt relief. The kind a doctor feels when a tumor is removed before it spreads. This bridge had carried my name like a disease. Now my name was on the document that killed it. At the edge of the site, behind the yellow tape, Megan stood watching. Short-sleeved white shirt, no sweater, no jacket. The bruises on her forearms had faded to pale shadows. She stood with her arms uncovered, and when I looked at her, she gave me a single nod. Not a wave, not a smile. A nod that says, "I am with you, and I am not hiding anymore." After the third column fell, Megan walked to a gray sedan on Shelby Avenue. Louise Chen was waiting. They drove to the United States Attorney's Office, where Megan spent 3 hours giving a full sworn statement. Every bruise, every threat, every night calculating whether her children were safer inside that marriage or outside it. She told the truth the way her mother had taught her, completely, precisely, without apology. The excavator worked until 4 in the afternoon. Every column, every beam, every slab of fraudulent concrete reduced to rubble along the Cumberland River. I stood as the last piece fell. A massive block that hit the water like thunder and sent a wave rippling across the surface. I took off the white hard hat and held it against my chest. "Now we can start telling the truth," I said. The trial began on a Monday in June. Estes Kefauver Federal Building on Broadway, Courtroom 4, second floor. I had driven past that building 1,000 times and never imagined I would be sitting inside it with my hand on a Bible. Louise Chin had spent 3 months building the case with the United States Attorney's Office. The charges filled 11 pages. Wire fraud, bank fraud, conspiracy, forgery, money laundering, criminal endangerment, filing falsified medical documents, domestic violence. The list read like a textbook for a law school final exam. Craig sat at the defense table in a gray suit that no longer fit. 3 months in federal detention had taken weight off his frame and color from his face. Beside him sat a public defender named Rawlings, who inherited the case after Vanessa's arrest. Vanessa sat at a separate table with her own attorney, hands clasped too tightly in her lap. Engineers noticed stress points. The prosecution called 9 witnesses over 4 days. Frank Morrison testified about structural violations. He brought photographs, load calculations, and a model showing how the bridge would have failed. 18 to 24 months before collapse, the courtroom went silent when he described the elementary school 400 yards from the East End. Earl testified about the surveillance, photographs, hotel meetings, financial trails. He spoke the way he always spoke. Every fact in order, like tools on a pegboard. The FBI forensic accountant walked the jury through the money. $2 million in funding, $600,000 drawn, $410,000 diverted, $350,000 to Darren Voss, $60,000 to Vanessa, $190,000 to construction that met no standards. Every dollar documented. On the 3rd day, they called me. I walked to the stand in my brown sport coat. The camera had been removed and entered as evidence weeks earlier. I sat down, stated my name, and looked at the jury. 12 people, 7 women, 5 men. They looked tired. 4 days of financial testimony will do that. "My name is Walter Raymond Brennan," I said. 71 years old. Licensed professional engineer, state of Tennessee, 41 years. I have designed or supervised 47 bridges, 12 overpasses, and 9 pedestrian structures across the southeastern United States. None has ever failed. None has ever harmed a single person. I paused. The bridge Craig Holloway built using my name would have killed people. Not because of weather or earthquakes, because he used the cheapest materials and pocketed the difference. He built a structure that carried my name, but none of my standards. I looked at Craig. He was staring at the table. I spent my career making sure that when people crossed a bridge, they did not have to think about whether it would hold them. That is what engineers do. We carry the weight so others do not have to worry about it. I turned to the jury. Craig Holloway stole my name. He stole public money. He beat my daughter. And he built something designed to fail. I am here to make sure it does not. The courtroom was quiet. The kind of quiet that has weight. I looked at the jury and saw it in their faces. Not anger, understanding. The understanding of 12 ordinary people who had just been shown what happens when someone builds without integrity. The prosecutor thanked me. I stepped down from the stand and walked back to my seat. Dot was in the gallery in her wheelchair, front row, beside Megan. Megan was wearing a short-sleeved blouse. Dot had her reading glasses on top of her head and her hands folded in her lap. As I passed them, Dot reached out and touched my sleeve. Just a touch. 2 fingers on the cuff of my sport coat. 46 years in that gesture. I sat down, and waited for the verdict. The jury deliberated for 7 hours. I counted every one, from a wooden bench outside courtroom 4. Dot sat beside me in her wheelchair. Megan on my other side, hands wrapped around a paper cup of coffee gone cold 2 hours ago. Earl leaned against the opposite wall, arms folded, watching the courtroom door the way a man watches a river before a storm. At 4:17, the bailiff opened the door. "The jury has reached a verdict." Craig was already at the defense table. He looked smaller than at the start of the week. Vanessa sat at her table, back straight, eyes forward. The foreman was a woman in her 60s, with silver hair and reading glasses. She reminded me of Dot. Judge Catherine Aldridge spoke. "Has the jury reached a verdict on all counts?" "We have, Your Honor." The foreman read each count, each word landing like a hammer on steel. Craig Holloway. Guilty of wire fraud. Guilty of bank fraud. Guilty of conspiracy. Guilty of forgery of a professional license. Guilty of criminal endangerment. Guilty of domestic violence. 6 counts. 6 times the word guilty. Vanessa Cole. Guilty of conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Guilty of money laundering. Guilty of forgery. Guilty of filing falsified medical documents. 4 counts. Craig's head dropped at the first guilty. By the 6th, his shoulders were shaking, and his public defender had placed a hand on his arm. Vanessa did not move. She received each verdict the way a wall receives rain. Sentencing came 3 weeks later. The courtroom was full. Frank Morrison provided an impact statement. 20 to 30 lives at risk. School children, joggers, mothers with strollers. Judge Aldridge spoke for 12 minutes. The words that mattered were the numbers. Craig Holloway, 14 years federal prison. No early release on fraud charges. Restitution of $1,800,000. Vanessa Cole, 5 years federal prison. Disbarment in Tennessee and Georgia. Restitution of $410,000. Louise Chin had negotiated for months on Megan's behalf. Full cooperation. Testimony. Evidence. A victim of domestic violence acting under coercion. Megan Holloway. 2 years supervised probation. Community service. Mandatory counseling. No prison time. When the judge read Megan's sentence, Dot exhaled beside me. A long, slow breath, like air released from a structure holding too much weight for too long. Megan turned and looked at her mother. Dot nodded once, the same nod Megan had given me at the construction site. "I am with you." We walked out into June's sunlight. Dot's wheelchair rolled across the marble lobby and through the glass doors onto Broadway. Nashville moved forward the way cities always do, carrying its people without asking whether they deserved it. Megan walked beside us. Earl followed 3 steps behind, hands in his pockets. "It is over," Megan said quietly. "Almost," I said. "The new bridge took 9 months to build. I know, because I was there for every one of them." The city of Nashville awarded the reconstruction contract in August, 2 months after the trial. A legitimate firm out of Knoxville. Real engineers. Real materials, real inspections. Frank Morrison personally oversaw the federal compliance reviews, and I served as consulting engineer at no charge. The city offered to pay me. I told them my name had been on the bridge that almost killed people. The least I could do was put it on the one that would keep them safe. I drove to the site 3 mornings a week. Hard hat, steel-toed boots, clipboard. Dot came with me on Tuesdays. Earl would park the van and push her wheelchair to the observation area the city had set up along the greenway. She brought a thermos of coffee and her novel, and she watched the crews pour concrete the way she used to watch me work 30 years ago. With patience, with trust, with the quiet certainty of a woman who understood that building things right takes time. The steel was grade A36, I checked every delivery myself. The concrete met federal bridge specifications. The foundation pilings went down to the depth the soil report required, not a single inch less. Every weld was inspected. Every bolt was torqued to specification. Every measurement verified twice. Jake and Emma came to the site on a Saturday in October. Jake wore a yellow hard hat that was 2 sizes too big and spent an hour asking the foreman questions about hydraulic cranes. Emma brought her graph paper and colored pencils and sat on the tailgate of my truck, drawing the bridge as it grew. She labeled every section: deck, girder, abutment, piling. Her handwriting was getting better. Her lines were getting straighter. "Grandpa," she said, holding up the drawing. "Is this right?" I looked at it. Every proportion was correct. Every label was in the right place. "That is exactly right," I said. In November, Louise Chen helped me establish the Brennan Bridge Builders Scholarship Fund. We seeded it with $100,000 from our savings. The scholarship would be awarded annually to a student from Davidson County pursuing a degree in civil engineering. The only requirement beyond academics was a 500-word essay answering one question. What does it mean to build something that lasts? Dot chose the question. Of course she did. The first application cycle opened in January. We received 47 submissions. Dot read every single one at the kitchen table with her reading glasses and a red pen, grading them the way she had graded library program proposals for 3 decades. Thoroughly, fairly, without sentiment. The first recipient was a young woman named Adriana Reyes, 20 years old, first-generation college student. Her father was a construction worker from Antioch who had spent 30 years pouring concrete for other people's buildings. In her essay, she wrote a sentence that Dot taped to our refrigerator. "A bridge is a promise between the person who builds it and every person who will ever cross it. I want to spend my life keeping that promise." Megan was the one who handed Adriana the check at the award ceremony in February. She stood at the podium in a short-sleeved dress, her arms bare, and she spoke without notes. "My father built bridges his entire life," she said. "This scholarship exists because he never stopped." I sat in the front row beside Dot. She reached over and placed her hand on mine. Her fingers were thin and warm. I did not trust my voice, so I said nothing. Some moments do not need words. They just need to be felt. The bridge opened on a Saturday morning in April. They held a ribbon-cutting ceremony at the east end, near the Greenway, 400 yards from the elementary school. The mayor spoke. Frank Morrison spoke. A representative from the Army Corps of Engineers spoke. They asked me to speak too. I almost said no. Dot said yes for me. I stood at the podium with the Cumberland River behind me and 200 people in front of me, and I said the only thing that mattered. This bridge was built right. It will hold you. That is all I have ever wanted any of my work to do. It was not a long speech. Engineers do not give long speeches. We give measurements, and we make sure they are accurate. After the ceremony, we stayed. Jake and Emma were the first 2 children to walk across the new bridge. Jake ran. Emma walked slowly, stopping halfway to look over the railing at the water below. She had her graph paper notebook in her hand. I do not know if she was measuring something or just looking. With Emma, both are possible. Megan stood at the east end and watched her children cross. She was wearing a sleeveless dress. Spring in Nashville is warm enough for that, but that was not why she chose it. She chose it because she could, because there was nothing left to hide. That evening we sat on the back porch, Dot and I. The dogwood trees were blooming white and pink along the fence line. The garden ramp I had promised her was finished, handrails and everything. She had used it every morning for 2 months to reach the raised flower beds I had built at wheelchair height. Tulips, daffodils, a row of herbs she used for cooking. "Walt," she said. "Yes." "Do you remember what you said the night before the meeting at Pinnacle Tower? About the ramp?" "I said I would build you one." "You did." She looked at the garden. "You always build what you promise." I reached over and took her hand. Thin fingers, warm. The same hand that had opened a secret compartment in a wheelchair and changed everything. The same hand that had held our daughter's head in her lap on the 31st floor. The same hand that had graded 47 scholarship essays with a red pen. We sat there as the sun went down behind the Nashville skyline. Two old people on a porch. Nothing special to look at. But between us, we had built something that would last longer than any bridge I ever designed. A family that survived. A name that meant something again. A granddaughter who draws blueprints. A grandson who asks questions about cranes. A daughter who walks in the sunlight with her arms bare. If you are listening to this story, I want you to know one thing. It does not matter how old you are. It does not matter if they call you useless. It does not matter if the people who should love you the most are the ones trying to tear you down. You are not too old to fight. You are not too old to protect the people you love. And you are never too old to build something new. My name is Walter Raymond Brennan. I am a bridge builder, and I am not finished yet. If this story meant something to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment and tell me about the bridge you are building in your own life. Subscribe so you do not miss what comes next, because there is always something next. Always.